It's Tuesday afternoon, 12 noon Eastern time, across different times throughout the time zones. So, whatever time zone you happen to be in, welcome to the show. I hope you're having a pretty good day so far. It's Tuesday, it's the second day of the week. Tomorrow's hump day, as we call it on Wednesday. Of course, tomorrow night is the big night as far as the schedule is concerned, and as far as futures wagering is going to be predicated upon. We're going to take a look at that and talk about that as well. But in the meantime, thank you very much for listening. We're coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina, right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as coming to you on most of your major podcast platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, you name it, Spotify, we're there. Thank you very much for listening. I tell you right now, we totally appreciate you listening to the show. So today we have things to talk about. Of course, usually we talk about what happened yesterday. We'll bring you up to date as far as the analytics are concerned on some of the results from yesterday as to how the underdogs, how the favorites did. And after that, we're going to be talking about 3 baseball games as we look at our little system of following where the pros are going and which direction they're going. We have 3 games on that for today. Oakland against Boston, Kansas City against Detroit, and Baltimore against the New York Mets. So we're going to take a close look at those 3 games. So perhaps if you're considering betting on them, even before we mentioned them, we're going to give you some more information and let you know in which direction the line movement is, as well as in which direction the pros are going as well. And of course, we're going to take a look and see what's happening in the NBA. The overs are doing so well. We're going to try to take a quick look at them and maybe kind of get an idea as to why certain things are happening with the overs market in the NBA towards the end of the season. Now, of course, we're coming down to the end. Before you know it, we're going to be having the playoffs, and we'll be paying much more closer attention to the NBA starting next week. But in the meantime, still the focus is baseball. And of course, for tomorrow, it's football. And tomorrow, the 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, the schedule will be released as to what teams are playing whom and what period and what time period within the schedule. We know who they're playing because that came out quite a while ago. But of course, it's just as important to understand where they're going to be playing and who they're going to be playing at what particular time during the season. Very, very critical, especially when it comes down to their off day, when they have their off week. Some teams do exceptionally well coming off of that, and some don't do as well. A lot depends on who it is they're going to be playing in that second game. So we're going to talk about that as well and take a close look and see at some of our futures thoughts and ideas as to who's really going to benefit from all this stuff going on with Rodgers over at Green Bay. So we'll be talking about that as well. But in the meantime, the first thing we want to get around to, as usual, is let's take a look and see what happened yesterday in the world of sports. In the National Hockey League, the favorites on top again, 6-3. There were 3 upsets. You had the Predators. They were a plus 130 against the Hurricanes. The Oilers were a minus 105 against the Canadiens. And the Canucks were a plus 145 against the Jets. So the unders went 7-2 yesterday, and they increased their slim lead to 50.7%, almost 51% at that point, as well as the first period overs. They went 5-4, but the first period unders, they still lead at 51%. So the National Hockey League has kind of come back to normal again. The favorites went 6-3. Favorites dominated yesterday, as they have really been doing through most of the season, except for the past few days. We've noticed a little influx into some underdog betting in there as well, and them coming out on top. In the meantime, in the NBA, the favorites did well there too. 4-2 straight up. But the underdogs won a perfect 6-0 against the spread. So once again, the favorites 4-2 against the spread, but the underdogs went a perfect 6-0 against the spread. Yet upsets by the Spurs, 7-point dogs against the Bucks, the Warriors, 2-point dogs against the Jazz, plus the Wizards being an 8-point dog against the Hawks. The Cavaliers, a 9.5-point dog against the Pacers. The Pelicans, 10-point dog against the Grizzlies. The Rockets, a plus 15 against the Blazers. Those teams covered in spite of losing the game. So even though the favorites did win 4-2 straight up, they against the spread, they didn't cover any of them. 6-0 against the spread as far as the dogs were concerned. But the favorites still lead in the season, but it was cut down to 51%. Okay. And the overs, they went 4-2 yesterday, and they extended their lead up to 50.5%. And we'll talk a little bit more about the overs and how well they've been performing over the past few days or so. In the meantime, in the Major League Baseball, the favorites, they went 3-2. Had upsets by the Orioles, a plus 120 on the money line against the Red Sox, and the Angels, a plus 160 against the Astros. But the favorites still lead 272 to 235 straight up on the season so far. The unders went 4-1. And they have their lead once again, 255 to 253. They've been kind of going back and forth throughout the season so far. Not much of a spread between the overs and the unders in Major League Baseball. That kind of puts them at just a smidgen over 50%. So in the National Hockey League, the favorites went 6-3. In the NBA, the favorites went 4-2 straight up, but they went 6-0 against the spread. So the dogs were out there barking loud and clear, not only with their wins, but covering with the other games as well. And of course, in Major League Baseball, the favorites a little more 3-2 against with the Orioles, and of course the Red Sox and the Angels all coming up winners as well. So that's the story as far as baseball, the NBA, National Hockey League. Those are the things that happened yesterday. But more information also has finally come out about the upcoming Preakness race. It looks like Bob Baffert, even though his horse Medina Spirit is going to be going down to Pimlico, down to the racetrack in Maryland to participate in the Preakness Stakes. However, he will not be there. He's heading out towards California. He's getting away from all of the publicity, the negative stuff that's been coming out about him personally, as far as his past is concerned, with drugs on horses and things of that nature. But one thing you want to understand, Pimlico said, regardless, whatever happened in Kentucky, it's not totally conclusive yet. It hasn't really been ruled upon yet. We do know what we've read so far, that the horse came out positive, but now they're investigating it to see whether or not that's true or what's going on. But Pimlico says, doesn't matter to us. We want him to run. We want him to be here. Medina Spirit will definitely be competing in the Preakness, unless it becomes a blame or something happens between now and then. And one other thing to remember: if you're holding on to tickets for Medina Spirit, if you're holding on tickets for other horses besides Medina Spirit from the Kentucky Derby, thinking, oh, maybe they'll overturn it and I'll get my money back. No, you can forget about that. That's not going to happen. It's done. It's official. It's happened once before. Not only does it take time, it took like 6 or 7 years before it became official the last time this happened, where there was a drug problem and finally the horse was taken down. But as far as your bets are concerned, they're in. You're done. If you bet on Medina, you already collected your money. You're certainly not going to give it back. If you had one of the other horses, it's one of those things. You got a loser, and there's no doubt about that. So you might as well tear those tickets up, because they're not going to do anything for you. So that's the story so far. As far as the Preakness is coming up, we'll talk more about it when the time gets closer. In the meantime, let's take our first break. And when we come back, we're going to take a look at the 3 games that we've been watching to see how the line movement is going and in which direction the pros are going. Once again, those games are Oakland against Boston, Kansas City against Detroit, and Baltimore against the New York Mets. So, as normal, if you listened to the show before, you know we take 3 breaks. Each one is of about a minute duration. So, we'll be back into the zone looking at those 3 games right after this in 1 minute. And welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening. Totally appreciate it. We're coming to you live on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. Also on Blackjack TV back on the East Coast. Also at Mile High Radio, milehighradio.com. And of course on most of your platforms for podcasting, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it, we are there. So we have 3 games to take a look at. But before we get to those 3 games that we're going to see which direction they're going, just want to once again just remind you about a newsletter that we're thinking of putting together. And one of the things that the newsletter will definitely have will be the fact that we will mail to you by email. Obviously, that's slow mail, okay? Snail mail, as they call it, to give you an idea as to these 3 games, you would already know who they are. So that this way, if you wanted to make a bet early, you wanted to get it started before you went to work, or maybe you finally got a break at work to do these type of situations, you've already done your pre-game work, and now you're just looking to hear what's going to happen as far as the pros are concerned. We're going to be emailing you these 3 games ahead of time, so this will give you a heads up on those as well, get you into the situation as well. So that's part of the thing. But there's other things we're talking about. There's going to be like 4 or 5 different reasons why you might want to get involved with the newsletter. And again, if you're a serious bettor, if you really want to really be ahead at the end of the season, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be coming out in that newsletter that is going to be of great help to you. There are things we just can't go into talking about, because if I start talking about it, you'll go to sleep. Okay, there's so much data out there, because understand, it's an analytical business. We approach it from an analytical standpoint, and ever since Moneyball, analytics has really been ruling the roost. Again, even the football games, they have analysts up in the stands analyzing every single play. They know what's happened on every play through the years. They have it in their computers. So let's just say the team is on the 46, 47 yard line, their own 46 or 47. It's 4th down, a half a yard to go, a yard to go, maybe 2 yards to go, whatever the situation. The information is put into the computer. The analyst then calls down to the coach and says, you know what? You've got a 12%, 30%, 1% chance of actually making it work. Then they leave it up to the coach to decide whether he wants to take that risk or not. So that's the whole world of analytics is now totally involved in our lives in many more ways than you can think. So we kind of use that in making our selections, giving you tips and ideas. They're strictly from an analytical standpoint, has nothing to do with emotion. We try to take the emotion out of betting, because that's really not the right way to go. Trust me, it's not the way to go. If you're new at it, believe me, You don't want to use your emotions to say, oh, I love this team so much, I'm going to be betting on them. Good way to go right downhill. So if you're interested, you can send us an email and send it to the Sports Wagering Zone at gmail.com. That's the Sports Wagering Zone at gmail.com. So now let's take a look at the 3 games on tap for tonight. To begin with, at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, the Oakland Athletics, 21-15, taking on the Boston Red Sox at 22-14. Now, this is a non-divisional game. You got 2 of the top 3 teams in the American League playing against each other. The Athletics lead the American League West. They just took 2 out of 3 home games against the Rays, and the Red Sox lead the American League East, and they just took 3 or 4 on the road at Baltimore. Now, in tonight's series opener, the first game of the series, the Athletics come out with their righty Chris Bassett. He's 2-2 so far this season with a 3.7 ERA. The Red Sox will start Nathan Eovaldi. He's 4-2 this season with a 4.62 ERA. Now, as we look at the line for this game, it opened with the Red Sox minus 135 home favorite, and the Athletics a plus 125 road dog. Now, the public, as far as the tickets coming in so far, are all over the Red Sox at home. But we've seen Boston drop down from being a 135 at the open down to minus 127 on the money line. What this means, it's called a sharp reverse line movement, and it's on Oakland. The pros are grabbing the plus money or the underdog at plus 125 or plus 117, depending on where you can get in. Oakland has value. They're a dog with a high total. The total of this game is 9. The sweet spot dog, which is a plus 140 or less, has been very good this season. And the road dog has also been very good as far as return on investment was concerned. The pros also seem to be eyeing the under in this particular game. The total is 9 with a heavy under juice of minus 120. Oakland has a one-day rest advantage. They played on Sunday, while the Red Sox played yesterday, and now they travel back home for a quick turnaround game. So in the first game coming up at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, the pros in this particular situation are on the Boston Red Sox. So we'll see, take a look, we'll give you an idea. Actually, the reverse line movement is on Oakland. So they're actually on Oakland at the present time. Trying to give you some thoughts on that. It's Oakland that they kind of like, which is the underdog in this particular game. So Boston against Oakland, the pros are on Oakland as well as the analytics as well. Meanwhile, also at 7 o'clock, you have the Kansas City Royals and the Detroit Tigers. The Royals are 16-17. The Tigers are 10-24. Now, both of these American League Central teams, they've been kind of struggling lately because of that, they're both really going to be desperate to win today. The Royals have lost 8 straight games. And the Tigers, they're just 3-13 over their last 16 games. So in tonight's game, which is the series opener, the Royals come in with Brady Singer. He's 1-3 with a 3.41 ERA. And the Tigers come in with their lefty, Matthew Boyd. He's 2-3 with a 2.27 ERA. The line opened with Kansas City, a minus 120 road favorite, and Detroit opened as a plus 110 home dog. Now, the pros and the casual bettors, the general public, they're both betting on the Royals. We've seen Kansas City get steamed up from being that minus 20 up to minus 135. The Royals are 8-4 as a favorite this season. The Tigers are 9-21 as a dog. Kansas City is 8-5 on the road. Detroit is 5-10 at home. The Royals are going to lean on their hitting so far, but Kansas City's hitting at 234, while that puts them, I think, at number 13 overall. Detroit's hitting at 212, which ranks them 28th. The total of 7.5 with a minus 150 juice is on the over. The forecast calls for temperature in the low 50s, 10-mile-per-hour winds out to dead center, coming from home plate out to dead center. So in this one, the pros are on the over as well. The Royals are 4-0 against the Tigers so far in games this season. So in this game, the pros and the general public on the Kansas City Royals against the Detroit Tigers as the favorite in that game. So let's take our second break and we'll come back. We're going to take a look at the Baltimore Orioles against the New York Mets, and we're going to take a look at the NBA and try to look at those overs and try to get a little understanding as to maybe why the overs have been doing so very well over the past week or so. So let's take that break, and just a reminder, we'll be back into the sports wagering zone right after this. And welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo, coming to you live from Charlotte, North Carolina, right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as most of your primary podcast platforms such as Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're there as well. So thank you very much for listening. Let's review once again 2 of the 3 games that are on tap for tonight. At 7 o'clock, Oakland against the Boston Red Sox. In that particular game, the pros are on the dog in that game. The Oakland Athletics in that particular situation. And Kansas City against Detroit, the pros and the general public are all on Kansas City, a very heavy favorite. So if you're thinking about betting on Kansas City in that game, be ready to lay some heavy juice as well. Finally, at 7:10 Eastern time, of course, Baltimore Orioles 16-19 up against the Mets in New York at 16-13. Now, this is an interleague game as well, and they're trending in opposite directions. The Orioles, they just dropped 3 out of 4 at home against the Red Sox. In the meantime, the Mets, they've won 5 straight games against the Diamondbacks and the Cardinals. Now, in tonight's opener, the Orioles come in with John Means. He's 4-0. He's undefeated this season, a 1.37 ERA. And the Mets come in with their veteran righty, Marcus Stroman. He's 3-3 this season with a 2.12 ERA. As we look at the line, it opened with the Mets as a minus 135 home favorite on the money line, and the Orioles are plus 125. Now, the public sees Means coming off a no-hitter, and they're rushing to bet and grabbed the plus money with Baltimore because the game before he pitched a no-hitter. However, the pro money seems to be fading that trendy dog, and they're backing the red hot Mets. And we've seen New York get bet up from minus 135 up to minus 145 and almost up to 150 at some of the shops as well. Now, interleague teams with a line movement in their favor are at 58% this season. Interleague teams, which this game happens to be, okay, and they have a line movement in their favor, such as the Mets, they're 58% this season. Home teams with a 10 cents or more steam in a non-division game are at 59% this season. Now, we could also be looking at a lower scoring game as well. The total in this game is 7, with the under being juiced to minus 120, which means that it may drop from 7 down to 6.5. Once again, we've talked about this before, about how the money line, as it increases, it gets to a certain point, and they then decide to alter the line. So it may go from 7 down to 6.5 because of all the action. The interleague unders so far are 56% so far this year. Now, both teams have been profitable to the under this season. The Orioles are 23-12 to the under. The Mets, they're 16-12. As far as the weather, the forecast calls for temperature in the high 50s with the wind blowing in from left center at 10 to 15 miles per hour. That's why you're seeing that total drop the way it has so far. So as far as the pros are concerned, even though there's a no-hitter pitcher that pitched a no-hitter last time out, pitching on one of the teams, the pros seem to like the Mets, which is the other team in this particular situation, and they like them as a favorite as well, because the general public, they're on the Baltimore Orioles. So reviewing once again the 3 games on tap for tonight, as far as their line movement and in which direction the pros are going. With the Oakland Athletics and the Boston Red Sox, the pros are on Oakland, the underdog in that particular game. Kansas City against Detroit, the pros and the general public, they all agree Kansas City is the bet. But again, if you're one of them that's going to be betting that game, be prepared to lay some heavy juice. Meanwhile, the Orioles against the Mets, the pros on that game are on the New York Mets to win that game as well. They are the favorite at that game as well. So that's the story on the 3 games for tonight. Once again, we'll talk about them before we end the show with the end. We'll bring you up to date on them just in case you missed out on them, or you haven't listened to the show yet. Maybe you come in late for some reason or whatever, or you weren't paying attention doing something else when we were talking about them. So we'll review them just before we go. In the meantime, let's take a look at the NBA overs. Let's switch channels over here and switch over to the NBA, because again, we get quite a few emails saying, why don't you talk about the NBA? Well, of course, if you've been betting the NBA this season, you know how hard it's been to try to pick winners. Big trouble this season because COVID, different types of situations. And when you come down to the last couple of weeks of the season, some teams are tanking it, okay? So it's pretty tough, and it's been a rough season so far for people that have been betting NBA games. There's been some success, but I'll tell you, most of the people I've talked to, emails we've received, the NBA has been a tough road to hoe. So let's take a look at the overs, because they've been kind of interesting lately. The NBA overs, they went 4-2 yesterday. We talked about that. It's a hot streak that they've been on because we're coming to the end of the regular season. Now, so far in May, the overs are 43-34. That's 56%. So if you were betting $100, you're taking each over this month would be up roughly $700. Once again, they're 56% on the overs in the month of May. If you're betting $100, you bet on every over this month, you'd be up $700. $100 right now. Of course, if you bet only $50, you kind of adjust it to whatever amount of money you bet. It's always easier to kind of point out 100 to 700. That's simple. It's notable because the overs went just 49, almost 50% before May, 49.9% to be exact. In essence, overall, the overs are cashing as a 6.1% higher clip in this month than they have in other months. Now, the top May over betting system has been when the total rises at least a half a point. If you see the point go up a half a point, in these situations, the over is at 69% so far in May. So the question you have to ask is, why are they overs and why are they crushing it so far this month? And more than likely, it's a whole bunch of things. There's different factors come in. Some teams are tanking, playing zero defense, while others they've completely different motivations in terms of where they're going to be in the seeding, or they're battling to make or even to avoid a play-in tournament. So that could be some of the reasons. They're getting tired now. It's the end of the season. Could also be a factor as the long grind is coming to an end, and we had a quick turnaround from last year's bubble, okay? Whatever the case may be, the overs continue to be a winning bet in this final month. So that is what's going on with the overs. If you like betting NBA games and you want to look at something that you may have a real good shot at, and again, it's all in the statistics. The analytics say that this has been a great month so far. See what happens. Right now, doing very, very well. And we kind of gave you some of the thoughts and ideas as to why it's going on. And to be perfectly honest, for the rest of the season, whatever is left of it, these last few days, it's probably going to stay the same way. They're still going to be tired, even more tired. There are teams that are going to be tanking more than likely, and teams are going to be looking to play more offense than defense, because you're going to have substitutes coming in that are trying to put on a show for everybody. So that's some of the reasons that come into play. So you might want to think about it if you're going in that direction. So that's the story as far as the NBA is concerned with their overs. In the meantime, it's time to take our final break. Final break of the day. When we come back, we're going to talk about the NFL. It's going to give some thoughts as to how this whole thing with Rodgers is trying to kind of get together. There's some thoughts that I have on this, and I want to bring it to your attention. So let's take that final break, and when we come back, we'll take a look and see what kind of an effect that maybe that Rodgers situation, this drama that's going on there in Green Bay, how it's going to affect things as far as the futures are concerned. So let's take that break, and we'll be back in 60 seconds. And welcome back. We're to the final segment of the show today. You're in the Sports Wagering Zone. We're coming to you live from the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. So let's take a minute and let's stop and think about what's going on right now as far as the drama coming out of Green Bay. Is he going? Is he not going? Where is he going? What's the whole story? let's take a look at it. Let's see some ideas and thoughts as to who may benefit from it. I think one of the possibilities are the Vikings. They're a plus 300, okay, to win the NFC North. Plus 300. Now, if things go wrong for Green Bay, by going wrong, I mean Rodgers does leave. Okay, there's a good possibility the Vikings would be the team to fill into the slot and win that NFC North situation. So at plus 300, it may not be a bad look at this point in time. All types of stories coming out, possibly going to Denver. Miami is one of the teams they're looking at, but Denver looks like the number one choice as far as where he's going to go. So at 300, okay, at plus 300, by wagering $100, you may win 300. There's a good possibility that that's going to happen. So you kind of take that shot. It's a good shot that I think is available. Regardless of what happens, I think the Vikings, in spite of that, may have a pretty good chance of winning the NFC North because, again, even if he does stay, things are not going to be honky-dory as far as Green Bay is concerned. So that's just one of the offshoots that might be of benefit to you. And the other thing is this. Tomorrow, when the schedule comes out, and you should be thinking about who it is you're going to be betting on as far as the totals are concerned. Have some ideas to which direction you're going to go. And then listen tomorrow, 8 o'clock Eastern time. Okay, that's the time it's going to be on. Take a look at it and see where the schedule is going and how it affects whatever teams you're looking at to bet on as far as game totals are concerned. Here's one thought. Let me just kind of throw this at you. If you today go on and take Denver as an over. Okay, right now Denver's at 8.5. Some houses are more or less. Some houses have Denver off the board completely. Some houses have Denver and Green Bay off the board. If the house you're dealing with or your situation, whatever community you're in, whether it's Colorado or New York, New Jersey, Arizona, wherever you are, and you take a look, get in touch, involved with the sports books, see if whether or not they are taking Denver or Green Bay off the books. If they're still on, here's one way to kind of look at it. You take Denver as an over at 8.5. Okay, now you've got it. Now, if he happens to go to Denver, more than likely that number is going to go up to 10.5, maybe even 11. So at that point in time, if that happens, then you come in and you take Green Bay as an under, and you can possibly middle the whole situation. It's a shot. Is it going to happen? We don't know. But I know we kind of stay with analytics 99% of the time, but every now and then you kind of look at something and say, I'm not going to commit a lot of money to this, just a few dollars. You don't have to wager big bucks if you're going to get 300 to 1 odds on a situation. So you come in and you take Denver right now, you take them as an over, okay, or an under. Either way. The way I would look at it is I would take it as an over, okay? Then when finally everything gets settled, and if he does wind up going to Denver, two things are going to happen. Green Bay is going to drop down, and Denver is going to go up. Now, once it peaks up high, you come in again on Denver and take them as an under. And if things work out right, you're going to be right in the middle, and you're going to win on both ends. So just something to think about. Kind of think about it. Kind of put the paper, pencil down, go in there, see what's going on. That's one situation. And you can also go the other way with Green Bay and Denver. You could take them as the under right now and then take him as the over once it drops down. So either way, that's one way to take a look at it. So that's the story there. Once again, let's go over the 3 games we have on tap for tonight. Oakland against Boston. The pros are on Oakland. Kansas City against Detroit. The pros and the general public all on Kansas City. Very heavy. But again, if you like Kansas City, you're thinking about betting that game, keep one thing in mind. You're going to be laying some heavy juice on that game. Meanwhile, Baltimore against the Mets, the pros and the analytics are on the New York Mets. So that's the story for today. Think about that Denver Green Bay situation. And if you happen to be in a situation where you can bet those games yet, I would think about it. See how it looks. May not be a bad idea. Anyway, thanks again for listening. Hopefully, you're going to have a great day today. If you're betting, I hope you win. We certainly want you to win. But if you're not, sit back, relax, start thinking about your game totals. Tomorrow when the schedule comes out, it's going to be tomorrow at 8 o'clock Eastern time. Put all the stuff together. We'll talk about it on Friday. We'll talk about it on Thursday. We'll see what we can come up with, some thoughts and ideas on that as well. So thanks again for listening. We'll be back again tomorrow, once again at 12 noon Eastern time, right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as most of major podcast platforms. So until tomorrow at 12 noon, I'm Chris Pardo. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back again tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern Time on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. Goodbye, everybody.